The DNA test that destroyed my perfect family. Let me tell you how a simple $99 DNA test kit from Amazon completely obliterated my picture-perfect family and exposed a lie so massive that it sent shockwaves through 3 generations. What started as a fun Christmas gift turned into the most devastating revelation that would make my grandmother fake her own death just to escape the truth. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell me what you would do if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. It was Christmas morning, 2023. Our family was gathered at my grandmother Eleanor's sprawling Victorian mansion in Charleston, the same house where 4 generations of Whitmore women had celebrated every holiday. The tree was perfectly decorated, presents wrapped in coordinating gold paper, and everyone was playing their assigned roles in our family's annual performance. My mother Catherine sat elegantly in her silk blouse, sipping mimosas and commenting on how tasteful everything looked. My Aunt Julia was busy organizing the gift exchange with military precision, while my cousin Sophia live-streamed the whole thing for her Instagram followers. And there was Eleanor, our family matriarch, holding court from her antique armchair like the queen she believed herself to be. That's when I pulled out the DNA test kit I'd bought for her. "Grandma, I thought it would be fun to trace our family tree. You always talk about our aristocratic British roots." Eleanor's face went white. Not pale. White. Like she'd seen a ghost. "That's unnecessary, dear," she said, her voice strained. "We know exactly where we come from." But I was already excited, already imagining the stories we'd discover. "Come on, Grandma. It'll be like solving a mystery together." I handed her the kit with a bright smile. She stared at it like I'd just handed her a bomb. My mother and aunt exchanged a look I didn't understand at the time. The room went quiet except for Sophia, still narrating to her phone about family traditions. 3 weeks later, the results came back. I was sitting in my apartment when I opened the email, expecting to find confirmation of our English heritage, maybe some distant royal connections Eleanor always hinted at. Instead, I found something that made my blood run cold. According to the DNA analysis, Eleanor Whitmore was 47% Ashkenazi Jewish, 23% Eastern European, and 15% Italian. 0 British ancestry. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what came next. A match notification. Eleanor had a half-sister living in Brooklyn named Ruth Goldstein. And Ruth had uploaded her own DNA results years ago, looking for family members who might have survived the Holocaust. My hands were shaking as I read Ruth's family tree. Her father, Samuel Goldstein, had fled Nazi Germany in 1938 with his pregnant wife and young daughter. They'd settled in New York, changed their name from Goldman to Goldstein, and started over. But according to Ruth's notes, Samuel had another daughter from a previous relationship, a daughter named Elsa who had disappeared during the war. Eleanor's real name was Elsa Goldman. I sat there staring at my laptop screen, trying to process what this meant. My grandmother, the woman who'd spent my entire life talking about our pure bloodline and our connection to British nobility, was actually a Holocaust survivor who had been hiding her Jewish identity for over 80 years. But the story got worse. I created a fake profile and reached out to Ruth, pretending to be a genealogy researcher. She was eager to share what she knew about her missing sister. Elsa was only 16 when she disappeared, Ruth told me over video chat. Her apartment was filled with old photographs and documents. Our father received one letter from her in 1943, saying she was safe and had found a new family. Then nothing. We assumed she had died. Ruth pulled out a faded photograph. Even in black and white, even after 8 decades, I could see it was Eleanor. Same sharp cheekbones, same piercing eyes, same stubborn chin. She was engaged to a young man named David before the war, Ruth continued. They were supposed to marry when she turned 18. But then the Nazis came, and everything changed. I felt sick. What happened to David? Ruth's face crumpled. He was killed in Auschwitz, along with his entire family. Elsa never knew. She'd already escaped by then. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Eleanor hadn't just changed her identity to survive the war. She'd completely reinvented herself, burying her past so deep that even her own family didn't know the truth. But there was more. I spent the next week digging through public records, old newspaper archives, anything I could find about Eleanor's life before she became Eleanor Whitmore. What I discovered made me question everything I thought I knew about my family. In 1944, a young woman named Elsa Goldman had married Charles Whitmore III, a wealthy industrialist from Charleston who was 30 years her senior. The marriage announcement in the Charleston Post described her as a refugee from war-torn Europe who had been graciously taken in by the Whitmore family. But the records showed something different. Charles Whitmore III was a documented Nazi sympathizer who had been investigated by the FBI for his business dealings with German companies during the war. He'd married Elsa not out of kindness, but because he needed to clean up his image after the war ended. It was a transaction. He got a wife who could help rehabilitate his reputation, and she got safety, money, and a new identity that would protect her from ever being found. My grandfather, the man Eleanor always described as her dear departed Charles, had been a Nazi collaborator, and she had known. I confronted her that evening. Eleanor was in her study, reading by the fireplace like she did every night. When I walked in with printouts of everything I discovered, she didn't even look surprised. I wondered when this day would come, she said quietly, setting down her book. Is it true? I asked. All of it. She nodded slowly. Most of it. Grandma, you have a sister. She's still alive. She's been looking for you for 80 years. Eleanor's composure finally cracked. Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but her voice remained steady. Ruth survived? Yes. And she never stopped hoping you were alive, too. Eleanor stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden she'd tended for decades. I couldn't tell anyone, not even your mother. Charles made me promise. He said if anyone ever found out about my past, about his past, it would destroy everything he'd built. So you lived a lie for 80 years? I lived, she said firmly. That's what mattered. I survived when millions didn't. I built a new life, raised a family, created something beautiful from the ashes of everything I'd lost. But what about Ruth? What about the family you left behind? Eleanor turned back to me, and for the first time in my life, she looked fragile, old, broken. Every day, she whispered. Every single day I thought about them. But I was 19 years old, Lily. I was alone in a foreign country, married to a man I barely knew, trying to survive in a world that wanted me dead. I did what I had to do. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to rage at her for the lies, for the fake aristocratic persona, for making us all believe we were something we weren't. But looking at her in that moment, I saw something different. I saw a scared teenager who had made impossible choices in an impossible situation. What happens now? I asked. Eleanor walked to her desk and pulled out a thick envelope. I've been waiting for this conversation for 20 years, she said, handing it to me. Everything is in there. The truth about Charles, about the money, about how I really survived the war, and instructions for what I want you to do with it. I opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of documents, photographs, and a letter written in Eleanor's careful handwriting. The letter was addressed to Ruth. You're going to help me die, Eleanor said calmly. What? Not literally, she said with a weak smile. But Eleanor Whitmore needs to disappear. It's time for Elsa Goldman to come home. The plan was more elaborate than anything I could have imagined. Eleanor had been preparing for this moment for years, slowly transferring assets, creating new accounts, even securing a fake death certificate through contacts she'd made decades ago. Charles wasn't the only one with secrets, she explained. I learned how to survive in his world. I learned how to plan, how to manipulate, how to disappear when necessary. Within a month, Eleanor Whitmore was officially dead. Heart attack in her sleep, they said. Very peaceful. The funeral was beautiful, well-attended, properly dignified. My mother and aunt grieved appropriately. Sophia posted touching tributes on social media. But Eleanor wasn't in that casket. 6 weeks later, an 80-year-old woman named Elsa Goldman knocked on Ruth Goldstein's door in Brooklyn. Ruth collapsed when she opened it. They held each other and cried for 3 hours. I was there. I'd helped coordinate everything, helped Eleanor transform back into Elsa. We'd changed her hair, updated her wardrobe, even worked with a dialect coach to help her remember how to speak like she had before she became a Southern belle. My sister, Ruth kept saying, touching Eleanor's face like she couldn't believe it was real. My baby sister came home. The reunion was beautiful, but it came with consequences I hadn't anticipated. My mother found out about the deception when Eleanor's will was read. Technically, since Eleanor was dead, Her estate should have been distributed according to her instructions. But since she was actually alive and living under a different identity, everything was in legal limbo. Catherine was furious, not just about the inheritance, but about the lies, the fake death, the fact that her entire identity as a Whitmore was built on a foundation of deception. How could she do this to us? She raged during a family meeting that felt more like a tribunal. How could she make us live a lie our entire lives? She was protecting herself, I said, and protecting all of us. From what? Julia demanded. The war was 80 years ago. From people like Charles Whitmore, I shot back. From a world that would have rejected her if they knew the truth. She married a Nazi sympathizer to survive, and then she had to keep living that lie to protect her children. The room went quiet. I'd never told them about Charles's real history, about the FBI investigations, the business deals with German companies, the documented evidence of his sympathies. That's impossible, Catherine whispered. I pulled out the files Eleanor had given me. It's all here. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence. Your father was a Nazi collaborator, Mom. And Eleanor knew. She married him anyway because it was the only way she could survive. The revelation split our family apart. Catherine couldn't handle the truth about her father. Julia refused to believe any of it. Sophia decided the whole thing was too problematic for her brand and distanced herself from the family entirely. But Eleanor, Elsa, was finally free. I visited her in Brooklyn every few weeks. She'd moved into a small apartment near Ruth, and for the first time in my life, I saw her genuinely happy. She was learning Hebrew, attending synagogue, cooking recipes from her childhood that she'd hidden away for 8 decades. I forgot who I was, she told me one afternoon as we walked through Prospect Park. I became so good at being Eleanor Whitmore that I almost lost Elsa entirely. Do you regret it? I asked. Any of it? She considered the question for a long moment. I regret the lies I had to tell. I regret the pain it caused your mother. But I don't regret surviving. And I don't regret finally coming home. 3 months later, the story broke nationally. Someone had leaked details about the fake death, the hidden identity, the Nazi connections. The headlines were brutal. Southern Belle's secret Nazi past. Holocaust survivor fakes death to escape family legacy. The Whitmore deception, a family built on lies. Journalists camped outside the Charleston mansion. They tracked down Eleanor's old friends, her former neighbors, anyone who might have known about the deception. The story had everything. World War II drama, family secrets, fake deaths, hidden fortunes. My mother went into hiding. Julia hired a PR firm to manage the fallout. Sophia deleted all her social media accounts. And me? I finally understood why Eleanor had given me those documents. She'd wanted someone to tell the real story. Not the sensationalized version the media would create, but the truth about a teenage girl who had to choose between death and deception. I wrote it all down. Every detail, every document, every conversation. I published it as a book 6 months later. The Girl Who Became Eleanor, a Holocaust Survivor's American Dream. It became a bestseller. Eleanor, Elsa, lived 3 more years after her death. She died peacefully in her sleep in Ruth's apartment, surrounded by photographs of the family she'd thought she'd lost forever. Ruth held her hand as she passed. At her real funeral, attended by the Jewish community in Brooklyn who had embraced her as one of their own, the rabbi spoke about the courage it takes to survive and the even greater courage it takes to finally come home. My mother didn't attend. She never forgave Eleanor for the deception, never accepted the truth about her father. Julia came, but stood in the back, uncomfortable and out of place among people who celebrated a woman she'd never really known. But I was in the front row, holding Ruth's hand, thinking about the DNA test that had started it all. A simple kit that had promised to reveal our family's origins had done exactly that, just not in the way any of us had expected. Sometimes the truth isn't about confirming what you think you know. Sometimes it's about discovering who you really are, even if that person has been buried for 80 years under layers of lies, survival, and the desperate desire to belong somewhere safe. Eleanor Whitmore died so that Elsa Goldman could finally live. And in the end, maybe that was the most beautiful family tradition of all. The courage to choose authenticity over comfort, truth over safety, and love over fear. The DNA results are still in my desk drawer. Sometimes I look at them and think about how a $99 test kit brought down an entire family dynasty, exposed decades of secrets, and reunited two sisters who had been separated by one of history's greatest tragedies. But mostly, I think about Eleanor's last words to me. Promise me you'll remember both versions of my story. The lies were necessary, but the truth was always there, waiting for someone brave enough to find it. I kept that promise. And now you know the truth too.